The mining ship Crimson Dawn drifted through the darkness of space like a metal coffin. Its hull was old and scarred from years of asteroid mining in the outer rim. The ship groaned and creaked as it moved through the void, held together by repairs. And prayers. Captain Jiho sat in his command chair, staring at the star charts displayed on the main screen. His dark eyes showed no emotion as he studied the data. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. The air recycler hummed loudly, a constant reminder that they were far from any planet that could support life. Murray stood at the engineering console, her fingers dancing across the control panels. She had been the ship's chief engineer for 5 years. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her work clothes were stained with grease and coolant. She knew every bolt and wire on the Crimson Dawn better than anyone else aboard. "Captain," Murray said, looking up from her console, "the fusion reactor is running hot again. We need to stop for maintenance soon, or we risk a core breach." Jiho did not turn around. "How long can we push it? Maybe 12 hours? Maybe less. This ship is old, Captain. She needs proper care." At the communications station, Dan monitored the subspace channels. Her young face was worried as she listened to the static-filled transmissions from other ships in the sector. She had joined the crew only 6 months ago, fresh from the Space Academy. Kyung, the navigator, plotted their course through the asteroid field. His steady hands moved the ship between the floating rocks with practiced skill. He had been flying ships since before Murray was born. "Captain," Kyung called out, "I'm picking up something strange on the sensors. There's an energy signature about 2 hours ahead of us." Jiho finally turned in his chair. "What kind of signature?" "I don't know, sir. It's unlike anything I've seen before." "Very powerful, but the readings are all wrong." "It's coming from the void sectors." Murray looked up sharply. The void sectors were a region of space that all ships avoided. Strange things happened there. Ships that entered rarely came back. Those that did return brought stories of impossible phenomena and lost time. "We should stay away from that area," Murray said firmly. "The void sectors are dangerous. Our ship can't handle the gravitational stresses." Jiho stood up and walked to the main display. The energy signature showed as a bright dot on the edge of the danger zone. His eyes gleamed with something that made Murray uncomfortable. "Think about it," Jiho said slowly. "An energy source that powerful could be worth a fortune. The company would pay us millions for a discovery like this." "Captain, with respect, the risk is too great," Murray argued. "Our hull integrity is already compromised. If we encounter gravitational anomalies—" "I've made my decision," Jiho cut her off. "Kyung, set course for the energy signature." Full speed. Murray felt a chill run down her spine. She had known Jiho for years, but something in his voice was different, cold, calculating. She watched him return to his command chair and wondered what had changed. The next 2 hours passed slowly. The Crimson Dawn approached the edge of the void sectors, and the strange energy readings grew stronger. The ship's instruments began to malfunction, showing impossible readings that made no sense. "Captain," Daeon called from her station. "I'm getting interference on all channels. Wait, ... There's something else. I'm picking up encrypted transmissions. They're not from any human frequency," Jiho tensed. "Can you decode them?" "I'm trying, but the encryption is too advanced." "This isn't human technology." Murray felt her suspicions growing. She quietly accessed the ship's communication logs through her engineering console. What she found made her blood run cold. Jiho had been sending and receiving messages to unknown recipients for weeks. The transmissions were heavily encrypted, but the frequency signatures matched known alien communication protocols. Before she could investigate further, the main screen lit up with an incredible sight. A massive ship hung in space before them, its hull dark and silent. The vessel was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the Crimson Dawn. Its design was unlike anything human or alien that Murray had ever seen. "My God," Kyung whispered. "What is that thing?" The alien ship appeared to be derelict, but its hull showed no signs of damage. It floated in a pocket of stable space, protected from the dangerous gravitational effects of the void sectors. Dayan. Scan for life signs, Jiho ordered. Negative, Captain. The ship appears to be dead? But sir, the power readings are off the charts. That thing has enough energy to power a small planet. Jiho smiled, and Mireille did not like the look in his eyes. Prepare a boarding party. We're going aboard. Captain, this is madness, Mireille protested. We don't know anything about that ship or its technology. It could be dangerous. Everything valuable is dangerous, Jiho replied. That's what makes it valuable. While the crew prepared for the boarding mission, Mireille continued her investigation into Jiho's secret communications. Using her engineering access codes, she managed to decrypt one of the recent messages. What she read made her heart pound with fear and anger. The message was from an alien faction called the Hegemony. They were raiders and slavers who had been attacking human colonies on the Outer Rim. The message offered Jiho a substantial payment. In exchange for information about human shipping routes and colony locations, Jiho's reply was even worse. He had already provided coordinates for 3 human settlements and promised more information in exchange for safe passage and a share of the profits. Mireille printed the decrypted messages and approached Jiho at his command station. Her hands shook as she held the evidence of his betrayal. Captain, she said, her voice barely controlled, we need to talk, privately. Jiho looked at the papers in her hands, and his expression changed. The friendly mask he had worn for years fell away, revealing something cold and ruthless underneath. My quarters, he said simply. Now, they walked to the captain's cabin in silence. Once inside, Jiho activated the privacy screens and turned to face her. You always were too curious for your own good, Mireille, he said calmly. How could you do this? She demanded, holding up the messages. These are human colonies, innocent people, families. Innocent? Jiho laughed bitterly. The company worked us like slaves for years, paying us nothing while they made billions. The colonies get rich off our labor while we risk our lives in. The void. Where's the innocence in that? So you decided to sell them to alien raiders? To murderers? I decided to get what I deserve. The hegemony pays well for information. Better than the company ever did. Mireille backed toward the door, but Jiho was faster. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her back into the room. I'm sorry, Mireille, I really am, but you've seen too much. I can't let you interfere with my plans. The crew will never go along with this, she said desperately. The crew will do what they're told. They don't need to know the details. Jiho activated his communicator. Security to the captain's quarters. Emergency. 2 armed crewmen arrived within minutes. They looked confused when they saw Mireille struggling against the captain's grip. The engineer has suffered a mental breakdown, Jiho told them smoothly. She's been talking about abandoning the mission and spacing herself. Get her to the emergency. Pod Bay medical emergency protocols? Captain, what are you doing? Mireille shouted as the security men grabbed her arms. Don't listen to him. Check the communication logs. He's betrayed us all. But the men were loyal to their captain. They dragged her from the room as she struggled and screamed warnings that no one believed. The emergency pod bay was cold and quiet. Jiho followed them down and watched as they sealed Mireille inside the small escape pod. Through the small window, she could see his face. There was no emotion there, no regret. I'm sorry it had to end this way, he said over the pod's communication system. But you should have minded your own business. The pod bay doors opened and the vacuum of space reached. And with invisible fingers, the pod was ejected into the void, tumbling away from the crimson dawn toward the massive alien vessel through the pod's tiny window. Mireille watched her former ship grow smaller and smaller. She was alone in the darkness, with limited life support, and no hope of rescue. The alien ship loomed ahead of her, dark and mysterious dot behind her. The crimson dawn turned away and disappeared into the black of space. Carrying her betrayer and his crew toward whatever fate awaited them, Mireille was alone in the void, abandoned and left to die. But she was not dead yet. And in the darkness ahead, something ancient and powerful was waiting for her arrival. The escape pod tumbled through space like a dead leaf in the wind. Inside, Murray fought to stay conscious as the small craft spun wildly toward the massive alien ship. The pod's artificial gravity had failed during ejection, and she floated helplessly. Against the straps that held her to the pilot's seat, red warning lights flashed on the control panel. The oxygen recycler was damaged, and she had maybe 6 hours of breathable air left. The heating system flickered on and off, making the tiny cabin alternate between freezing cold and uncomfortably warm. "Come on," she whispered to herself, reaching for the manual controls. "You've fixed worse problems than this." Her engineering training took over despite her fear. She opened the access panel beneath the pilot console and began checking the damaged systems. The impact from ejection had knocked several circuit boards loose. She pressed them back into place and rerouted power from non-essential systems. The oxygen recycler hummed back to life. The heating stabilized. It was not perfect, but it would buy her time. Through the small porthole, the alien vessel grew larger with each passing minute. The ship was beautiful in a strange way, its dark hull covered with patterns that seemed to shift and move in the starlight. The surface looked smooth as glass, but Murray could see it was actually covered in tiny geometric shapes that formed complex designs. The pod shuddered as it entered the alien ship's gravitational field. Automated systems that had been dormant for unknown ages suddenly came alive. Lights began glowing along the vessel's hull, tracing pathways through the mysterious patterns. A docking bay opened in the side of the ship, its entrance outlined in soft blue light. The escape pod was drawn inside by invisible forces, settling gently onto a platform that rose from the floor to meet it. Murray stared through the porthole at her. New surroundings? The docking bay was enormous, large enough to hold dozens of ships. The size of the crimson dawn, the walls curved upward into shadows, and strange symbols glowed softly along their surfaces. The air outside looked breathable. Her pod sensors detected oxygen, nitrogen, and trace gases in perfect balance for human life. But how was that possible? This ship had been drifting in space for who knew how long. She checked her portable scanner and emergency toolkit. The device showed no immediate dangers. No radiation, no toxic gases, no hostile life forms. Just clean air and artificial gravity that felt exactly like Earth normal. Taking a deep breath, Murray opened the pod's hatch. The air that flowed in was warm and carried a faint scent of something like flowers. She stepped out onto the platform, her boots making soft sounds on the smooth floor. The platform lowered slowly, bringing her down to the main deck of the docking bay. As soon as her feet touched the floor, more lights began glowing throughout the bay. Pathways of blue and white light traced patterns across the walls and ceiling. It was as if the ship was waking up, responding to her presence. A doorway opened at the far end of the bay. Beyond it, Murray could see a corridor filled with the same gentle light. She had two choices: stay in the docking bay and wait to die when her pod supplies ran out, or explore the ship and hope to find something that could help her survive. She chose to explore. The corridor was wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. The walls were smooth and featureless except for the flowing patterns of light that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a heartbeat. The floor felt solid beneath her feet, but it gave slightly with each step, like it was made of some advanced material designed for comfort. As she walked, more sections of the ship came alive around her. Doors opened to reveal empty rooms filled with strange furniture and devices she could not identify. The air remained fresh and warm no matter how deep into the ship she went. After 20 minutes of walking, she found what looked like a control room. The chamber was circular, with a high ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. In the center stood a pillar of crystal or metal that reached from floor to ceiling. Its surface was covered with symbols that glowed and shifted constantly. When Murray approached the pillar, the entire room suddenly filled with light and sound. Holographic displays appeared in the air around her, showing star charts, technical diagrams, and streams of data in languages she had never seen. A voice spoke, but not through her ears. The words formed directly in her mind, bypassing language entirely. The meaning was clear even though she heard no actual sounds. "Welcome, inheritor," the voice said. "You have been judged worthy to enter this vessel of the architects." Myray spun around, looking for the source of the voice. Who are you? What is this place? I am the Guardian, the consciousness left behind to maintain this vessel and test those who find it. You stand within the ship Eternal Threshold, built by the race you would call the Architects. Images appeared in the air around her. She saw beings of incredible beauty and intelligence, tall and graceful, working with technologies that seemed like magic. They built ships that could travel between stars in the blink of an eye. They created devices that could manipulate matter and energy with thought alone. The architects transcended physical existence long ago, the Guardian continued. But they left behind their greatest achievements for those who prove themselves worthy. This ship and its knowledge can be yours if you can master its trials. I don't understand, Myray said. I'm just an engineer. I fix broken machines. I'm not worthy of anything like this. Worthiness is not determined by title or position, the Guardian replied. It is proven through action and will. You survived abandonment in the void. You repaired your damaged pod with limited resources. You chose to explore rather than surrender to despair. These actions show the qualities the architects valued most. The holographic displays changed, showing technical diagrams of the ship's systems. The technology was incredibly advanced, but Myray could see the basic principles behind it. Power generation using controlled dark matter reactions. Propulsion systems that bent space and time. Life support that created perfect atmospheric conditions. From raw energy. The ship's systems respond to conscious will, the Guardian explained. But mastering them requires understanding both the technology and yourself. Are you prepared to begin the trials? Myray thought about her situation. She was alone, abandoned, with no way to return to human space. Her former captain had betrayed not just her, but all of humanity. Even if she somehow survived, the hegemony raiders would continue attacking human colonies with the information Jiho had provided, but this ship represented power beyond anything humans had ever achieved. If she could master its systems, she might be able to do something about Jiho's betrayal. She might be able to protect the innocent people he had sold to alien raiders. What kind of trials? She asked. Tests of will, intelligence, and adaptability. The architects believe that true mastery comes only through understanding both the tools and oneself. Some trials will test your ability to solve complex problems. Others will challenge your determination when faced with seemingly impossible situations. The Guardian paused, and Myray felt its attention focusing on her like a searchlight. But know this, Inheritor. Once you begin the trials, there is no returning to what you were before. The knowledge and power you gain will change you fundamentally. You will become something more than human, but also something apart from humanity. Do you accept these terms? Myray thought of Jiho's cold smile as he ejected her into space. She thought of the human colonies that would suffer because of his greed. She thought of all the innocent people who would die if no one stopped the hegemony raids. I accept, she said firmly. The room filled with brilliant light, and Myray felt something change deep inside her mind. New pathways opened in her consciousness, preparing her to receive knowledge that no human brain had ever contained. The ship's systems reached out to her thoughts, beginning to form connections that would grow stronger with each trial she completed. Then let us begin, the Guardian said. Your first trial awaits. A doorway opened in the wall behind her, revealing a corridor that led deeper into the ship. The path ahead glowed with soft blue light, welcoming but also mysterious. Myray took one last look around the control room, then stepped forward into her new destiny. Behind her, the holographic displays showed star charts of human space, marking the locations of colonies under threat. The ship's sensors were already tracking the Crimson Dawn as it carried its traitorous captain toward his rendezvous with the hegemony. The trials would be difficult, but Myray was no longer just fighting for her own survival. She was fighting for the future of humanity itself, and she had just gained access to weapons that could reshape the galaxy. The real journey was only beginning. The first trial chamber was unlike anything Myray had ever seen. The room seemed to exist in several dimensions at once, with walls that curved in impossible directions. Gravity pulled in different ways depending on where she stood, and the air itself shimmered with energy. "Your first test is adaptation," the Guardian's voice said in her mind. "You must navigate this space using only your will and understanding of physical laws." Myrrhe studied the chamber carefully. The laws of physics seemed twisted here but not broken. She could see patterns in the way objects moved and fell. After watching floating debris drift through the space, she began to understand how the gravity fields worked. She took a step forward and immediately felt herself pulled sideways toward a wall. Instead of fighting it, she relaxed and let the force carry her. When she reached the wall, she found she could walk on it as easily as on a floor. The room's gravity adapted to her position and intention. It took her 3 hours to cross the chamber, but she learned something important. The ship responded to confidence and clear thinking. When she doubted herself, the systems became unpredictable. When she moved with purpose and certainty, they helped her succeed. The second trial was harder. She entered a room filled with complex machinery that was falling apart. Pipes leaked strange fluids, power conduits sparked dangerously, and the life support system was failing. She had to repair it all using tools and materials she had never seen before. "This technology operates on principles beyond current human understanding," the Guardian explained. "But the basic concepts are the same as any machine. Find the patterns. Understand the purpose. Apply your knowledge." Myrrhe spent hours studying the alien components. The tools felt strange in her hands at first, but gradually she began to understand their functions. A device that looked like a crystal wand could weld metal at the molecular level. A sphere of liquid metal could reshape itself into any tool she needed. The breakthrough came when she stopped thinking of the machines as alien technology and started seeing them as extensions of natural forces. The power conduits carried energy the same way rivers carried water. The life support systems breathed like living things. When she began working with these principles instead of against them, the repairs became much easier. By the end of the week, she had restored the entire chamber to perfect working order. More importantly, she had learned to interface directly with the ship's systems through touch and thought. The trials continued for months. Each one pushed her further beyond human limitations. In one chamber, she learned to manipulate gravity by understanding how mass and energy curve space. In another, she discovered how to phase matter in and out of normal reality by adjusting its quantum frequency. The most difficult trial came after 2 months of constant testing. Myrrhe entered a chamber that contained nothing but empty space and a single chair. When she sat down, her consciousness was suddenly connected to the ship's vast sensor network. Information flooded her mind. She could see through sensors placed throughout the galaxy. She watched ships traveling between stars, planets spinning in their orbits, and entire solar systems dancing through space. The amount of data was overwhelming, threatening to crush her human mind under its weight. "This is the trial of consciousness," the Guardian explained. "The architect's final gift is the ability to perceive reality on a cosmic scale. But mortal minds cannot handle such awareness without proper preparation. You must learn to expand your consciousness while maintaining your core identity." The first few attempts nearly drove her insane. The sensation of experiencing the entire galaxy simultaneously was too much for her brain to process. She felt her sense of self dissolving into the cosmic awareness, becoming lost in the vastness of space. But gradually, she learned to control the flow of information. She built mental barriers that allowed her to focus on specific regions while keeping the rest in the background. She created filters that let her process the sensor data without being overwhelmed by its volume. After a month of practice, she could shift her awareness anywhere in the galaxy instantly. She could observe distant events as clearly as if she were standing next to them. Most importantly, she learned to do this while remaining completely herself. It was during one of these practice sessions that she discovered what had happened to the human colonies. Through the ship's sensors, she watched hegemony raiders attacking a settlement on the edge of human space. The colonists had no warning. Their defense ships were overwhelmed in minutes. Families ran screaming through burning streets while alien soldiers rounded them up for slavery. The attack succeeded because the raiders knew exactly where to strike. And when they had detailed information about the colony's defenses, shipping schedules, and population centers, information that could only have come from Jiho, Mireille watched 3 more attacks over the following days. Each one was perfectly planned using intelligence that Jiho had provided. Thousands of humans were killed or captured. Entire settlements were destroyed. Her grief and anger fueled a new level of understanding. The ship's systems responded to her emotions, becoming more powerful as her determination grew. She realized that the architects had designed their technology to amplify the user's will and purpose. The stronger her motivation, the greater her abilities became. "You are ready for the final lesson," the Guardian announced one day. The ultimate mastery that the architects achieved before their transcendence. The last chamber contained only darkness. When Mireille entered, she found herself floating in what seemed like empty space. But as her enhanced senses adapted, she began to perceive the true nature of reality. She could see the dark matter that filled the void between stars. She could feel the dark energy that drove the expansion of the universe. These invisible forces made up most of reality, but normal beings could neither see nor touch them. The architects learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of existence, the Guardian explained. Dark matter and dark energy respond to conscious will, but only for those who truly understand their nature. This knowledge made the architects masters of reality itself. The learning process was slow and dangerous. Dark energy was the force that drove galaxies apart. Trying to control it was like trying to hold back the tide. Dark matter was even more challenging, existing in a state that was barely connected to normal reality, but Mireille persevered. She learned to shape dark matter into tools and weapons that could affect normal matter from outside its dimensional framework. She discovered how to channel dark energy to bend space and time according to her will. The breakthrough came when she realized that consciousness itself was connected to these cosmic forces. The architects had not just learned to use dark matter and energy. They had become part of them, existing as conscious entities within the very structure of reality. As her training progressed, Mireille felt herself changing. Her human body remained the same, but her mind expanded to encompass knowledge and abilities that no human had ever possessed. She could perceive dimensions beyond the normal 3. She could manipulate matter and energy with thought alone. The ship became an extension of her will. Its hull was made of materials that existed partially outside normal space, making it nearly indestructible. Its weapons could focus the power of dark energy into beams that could slice through planets. Its engines could fold space to travel anywhere in the galaxy instantaneously, but the greatest change was in Mireille herself. She was still human in her thoughts and emotions, but she had become something more. She could exist partially outside normal time, making her effectively immortal. She could survive in any environment, from the heart of a star to the absolute cold of empty space. During her final months of training, she monitored Jiho's activities through the ship's sensors. He had been given command of a hegemony dreadnought. As payment for his treachery, he now led raids against human shipping, using his knowledge of patrol routes and defense systems to maximize the raiders' success. The man she had once respected had become humanity's enemy. He wore alien uniforms, commanded alien soldiers, and felt no remorse for the destruction he caused. He had betrayed not just her, but his entire species. "Your training is complete," the Guardian announced. "You have mastered the architect's greatest gifts. You can now reshape reality according to your will, but remember, with such power comes great responsibility. How you use these abilities will determine whether you become a force for creation or destruction." Mireille stood in the ship's control room, feeling the cosmic forces flowing through her consciousness. The vessel responded to her thoughts, its systems humming with barely contained power. Through her enhanced awareness, she could sense every human settlement in the galaxy, including those under threat from hegemony raids. She had become something beyond human understanding, but her heart remained unchanged. She would use her new abilities to protect the innocent and punish those who preyed upon them. Starting with the traitor who had abandoned her in the void, the ship's engines began to charge, as Mireille prepared to leave the void sectors. She had entered this region as a castaway facing certain death. She would emerge as an avenging force that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Jiho had made a terrible mistake when he chose to betray humanity. Soon he would learn the consequences of that choice. The eternal threshold emerged from the void sectors like a nightmare born from darkness itself. The ship no longer looked like the ancient vessel Mireille had discovered months ago. Under her influence, it had transformed into something that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight and controlled shadow. Its hull shifted constantly between solid matter and pure energy. Weapons that could unmake reality itself grew from its surface like living things. The ship existed partially outside normal space, making it nearly impossible to detect or track. Mireille stood in the control chamber. Her consciousness expanded across the galaxy through the ship's sensors. She could see everything that happened in human space. The hegemony raids continued, each one more devastating than the last. Entire colonies were being wiped out using information that Jiho had provided. She decided to start with the raider fleets themselves. Jiho could wait. First, she would eliminate the immediate threat to innocent humans. Her first target was a hegemony strike force attacking a mining station near the Centauri system. The raiders had surrounded the station with 12 warships, their weapons charging. To destroy the facility and enslave its workers, the Eternal Threshold appeared, without warning in the middle of the raider formation. One moment the space around the station was empty except for the attacking ships. The next moment, something impossible hung in the void between them. The hegemony commander tried to scan the mysterious vessel, but his sensors showed conflicting readings. Sometimes they detected a ship the size of a small moon, sometimes they showed nothing at all. The energy signatures made no sense according to any known physics. "Unknown vessel," the commander broadcast on all frequencies. "Identify yourself or be destroyed." Mireille's response came not as words but as action. She reached out with her enhanced consciousness and gently touched the mind of every human on the mining station. In an instant, they all knew they were safe. They felt a presence watching over them, ancient and powerful and utterly committed to their protection. Then she turned her attention to the raiders, the Eternal. Threshold's weapons were unlike anything that had ever existed. They did not fire energy beams or launch missiles. Instead, they reached out with controlled dark energy and simply removed portions of the enemy ships from reality. The first raider vessel vanished section by section, its hull dissolving into nothing as fundamental forces pulled it apart at the quantum level. The crew had time to scream once before their ship ceased to exist. The other raiders opened fire with everything they had. Plasma beams, fusion missiles, and particle cannons struck the Eternal Threshold with enough force to crack a planet's crust. The weapons passed harmlessly through the ship as if it were a ghost, their energy dispersing harmlessly into empty space. Mireille destroyed the entire raider fleet in less than 10 minutes. She did not kill the crews quickly or mercifully. She wanted word of this battle to spread throughout the hegemony. She wanted them to know that something new and terrible was hunting them. When the last raider ship was destroyed, the Eternal Threshold vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. The mining station's crew found themselves alone among the wreckage, saved by a force they could not understand or explain. News of the mysterious ship spread quickly through both human and alien communication networks. Other incidents followed in rapid succession. Hegemony fleets would attack human settlements, only to be destroyed by a vessel that appeared from nowhere and vanished without a trace. The attacks were always the same. The unknown ship would appear, eliminate every raider vessel with impossible weapons, and disappear. It never communicated with the humans it saved. It never stayed to receive thanks or answer questions. It simply came, destroyed the enemy, and left. Within a month, the hegemony had lost over 50 ships to the mysterious attacker. Their raids on human space became less frequent as commanders grew reluctant to risk their vessels against an enemy they could not understand or fight. The humans began calling the unknown Defender the Void Ghost. Military analysts studied the battle recordings, trying to understand the ship's technology. Scientists proposed theories about its weapons and propulsion systems. But no one could explain how a single vessel could be so devastatingly effective against entire fleets. Mireille monitored all the communications about her activities. She felt a grim satisfaction in the fear she was causing among the raiders, but she knew this was only the beginning. The hegemony would adapt eventually. They would find new tactics, new weapons, new ways to attack human settlements. More importantly, the source of their intelligence remained untouched. Jiho continued to provide them with detailed information about human defenses and shipping routes. As long as he remained free, the threat to innocent humans would continue. Through her enhanced awareness, she tracked Jiho's movements across the galaxy. He had been given command of a massive dreadnought called the Iron Fist. The ship was over 2 kilometers long and bristled with enough weapons to flatten a small moon. Its crew consisted entirely of hegemony soldiers who saw humans as nothing more than animals to be hunted and enslaved. Jiho seemed to enjoy his new position. He wore alien uniforms with pride and commanded his forces with the same cold efficiency he had once shown as a human captain. He felt no guilt about his betrayal, no remorse for the suffering he had caused. Mireille learned that Jiho was planning something much worse than simple raids. He was gathering intelligence for a massive hegemony assault on Earth itself. The plan was to capture humanity's homeworld and use it as a base for enslaving the entire human race. The attack fleet was already being assembled. Over 300 ships from different hegemony clans were gathering at a secret base in the Outer Rim. They would strike in one coordinated assault, overwhelming Earth's defenses before any help could arrive. But Jiho had made a crucial mistake. He assumed that the Void Ghost was some new human weapon, a secret project developed by Earth's military. He had no idea that the mysterious ship was commanded by the engineer he had abandoned to die in the void. Mirae decided it was time to reveal herself. She had eliminated enough raider fleets to prove her power. Now she would confront the man who had betrayed her and all of humanity. She began intercepting Jiho's communications with his hegemony contacts. At first, she simply listened to their planning sessions, learning the details of their attack on Earth, but gradually she began to insert subtle interference into their transmissions. Technical glitches appeared in their computer systems. Navigation equipment malfunctioned at critical moments. Weapon systems developed mysterious errors that took days to repair. The problems were small individually, but they accumulated into a pattern of increasing frustration and paranoia. Jiho began to suspect sabotage, but he could never find evidence of outside interference. His alien allies started to question his competence as their technical problems mounted. Trust within the fleet began to break down as commanders blamed each other for the escalating failures. Through it all, Mireille watched and waited. She was like a predator stalking her prey, gradually tightening the noose around Jiho's neck. Soon she would reveal herself and show him the price of betrayal. The eternal threshold hung in the darkness between stars, invisible to all sensors, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Mireille had learned patience during her months of trials, but her anger burned like a cold star in her enhanced consciousness. Jiho had sold humanity's secrets to aliens, who saw humans as nothing more than prey. He had caused the deaths of thousands of innocent people. He had betrayed not just his crew, but his entire species. Soon, he would learn that some betrayals carry consequences that echo across the cosmos itself. The void he had abandoned her to master had become her weapon, and she was about to show him its terrible power. The hunt was almost over. The reckoning was about to begin. The hegemony assault fleet gathered at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of metal locusts. 300 ships of various sizes and designs hung in formation, their weapons charged and ready. At their head was the Iron Fist, Jiho's massive dreadnought bristling with enough firepower to crack continents. On the bridge of his flagship, Jiho studied the tactical displays showing Earth's defenses. The planet's orbital stations and defense fleets were powerful, but they were designed to fight human enemies using human tactics. They would not be prepared for the coordinated assault he had planned. "All ships report ready," announced his tactical officer, a reptilian hegemony warrior whose scales glittered in the bridge lighting. "Earth's defenses are exactly as described in your intelligence reports." Jiho nodded with satisfaction. His years of gathering information about human military capabilities were about to pay off handsomely. The hegemony had promised him lordship over several human colonies after Earth fell. He would become one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "All ships advance on Earth, destroy their orbital defenses first, then land ground forces in the major population centers." The massive fleet began moving toward the inner solar system, their engines leaving trails of exotic energy in the darkness. Earth's early warning sensors detected the approaching armada and began broadcasting emergency alerts throughout human space, but before the fleet could reach Mars orbit, space itself began to change around them. Reality twisted and bent as something impossible emerged from the void. At first, it appeared as just a distortion in space, barely visible against the star field. Then the distortion grew larger and more defined, taking on the shape of a vessel that seemed to be made of crystallized darkness and captured starlight. The eternal threshold materialized directly in the path of the advancing fleet, hanging motionless in space like a challenge made manifest. The ship was beautiful and terrible at the same time, its hull shifting between solid matter and pure energy. Weapons that defied description grew from its surface like living things. Alarms began screaming on every bridge in the hegemony fleet. Their sensors showed readings that made no sense. Sometimes they detected a ship the size of a small asteroid. Sometimes they showed energy signatures powerful enough to fuel a star. The computer system struggled to process data that violated everything they knew about physics. "What is that thing?" demanded the hegemony fleet commander over the communication channels. "All ships, maintain formation, continue the advance." But Jiho felt a chill of recognition as he stared at the mysterious vessel. Something about its appearance triggered memories he had tried to forget. The way it moved through space reminded him of someone he had known, someone he had abandoned in the void months ago. The answer came as a voice that spoke directly into his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. The words carried harmonics that resonated through dimensions he could not perceive, and the meaning was crystal clear despite the impossible nature of the communication. "Hello, Jiho," Murray's voice said, reaching into his consciousness like a cold wind. "Did you miss me?" The blood drained from Jiho's face as he recognized the voice of his former chief engineer. The woman he had ejected into space, the woman who should have been dead for months, was somehow speaking to him from the mysterious ship. "Impossible," he whispered. "You're dead. I watched you die in the void." "Death is such a limited concept," Murray replied, her voice carrying undertones of cosmic force that made the bridge equipment flicker. "I found something much more interesting in the darkness you left me in. I found power, Jiho, power beyond anything you can imagine." The hegemony fleet opened fire with everything they had. 300 ships launched missiles, plasma beams, particle cannons, and exotic weapons that could shatter moons. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize entire solar systems. All of it passed harmlessly through the eternal threshold as if the ship existed in a different dimension. The weapons struck empty space and dissipated uselessly into the void. Then Murray began her counterattack. The eternal threshold's weapons were unlike anything that had ever existed in the galaxy. They reached out with controlled dark energy and began systematically dismantling the hegemony fleet ship by ship. Entire vessels simply ceased to exist as their atomic structure was unraveled at the quantum level, but Murray was not simply destroying the ships. She was demonstrating her power, showing the galaxy what happened to those who threatened innocent humans. Each vessel was taken apart slowly and deliberately, giving the crews time to understand their fate before their ships dissolved into nothing. "You always underestimated me," Murray's voice continued as the destruction unfolded around them. You thought I was just a mechanic, someone who fixed broken machines? You never understood that I see patterns everywhere, Jiho, including the pattern of your betrayal. Jiho watched in horror as his carefully assembled fleet was torn apart by forces he could not comprehend. Ships that had taken years to build vanished in seconds. Weapons that could crack planets had no effect on the mysterious vessel that destroyed them. How is this possible? He demanded, his voice cracking with fear. What have you become? I became what humanity needs, Murray replied. I became justice itself, given form and purpose. You sold our people to aliens who see them as prey. You betrayed your own species for money and power. Did you think there would be no consequences? The battle, if it could be called that, continued for an hour. One by one, the hegemony ships were eliminated with clinical precision. Their weapons were useless, their shields meaningless. Their advanced technology like toys compared to the cosmic forces Murray now commanded. Jiho tried to flee, ordering his ship's engines to maximum power. But space itself seemed to resist his escape. The Iron Fist moved as if it were traveling through thick liquid, unable to achieve even a fraction of its normal speed. There is nowhere you can run, Murray told him. I can see everything that happens. In this galaxy, I can be anywhere I choose to be in an instant. You cannot escape what you have become, Jiho. As the last of the escort vessels were destroyed, the Eternal Threshold approached the Iron Fist directly. The two ships faced each other in the darkness of space, predator and prey, preparing for their final confrontation. Your alien friends are all dead, Murray announced. Your fleet is gone. Your plan to enslave humanity has failed. Now there is only you and me and the accounting for what you have done. Jiho's bridge crew looked to him for orders, but he had none to give. His hands shook as he gripped the arms of his command chair. The woman he had condemned to death in the void had returned as something that could destroy entire fleets with. I thought I had no choice, he said desperately. The company treated us like slaves. We worked for nothing while they made billions. I deserved better. You had choices, Murray replied, her voice carrying the weight of cosmic judgment. You could have quit. You could have found another job. You could have reported the company's practices to the authorities. Instead, you chose to sell innocent humans to alien raiders. You chose to become a traitor to your own species. The Iron Fist shuddered as the Eternal Threshold's weapons locked onto it. But instead of destroying the ship immediately, Murray began to isolate it from normal space. Reality twisted around the dreadnought, cutting it off from the rest of the universe. Your trial will not take place in normal space, Murray explained. I have something special planned for you, Jiho, something that will show you exactly what your betrayal has cost. Space folded around the Iron Fist, and both ships vanished from the solar system. They reappeared in a pocket dimension that Murray had created, a bubble of reality torn from the fabric of space-time itself. Here, surrounded by swirling energies that had never been part of the normal universe, she would confront the man who had betrayed humanity. Here, she would show him the price of his treachery and ensure that he paid it in full. The pocket dimension Murray had created was a place of impossible beauty and terrible purpose. Swirling clouds of dark energy formed spirals that stretched into infinity, while fragments of crystallized time floated like jewels in the cosmic wind. This was a realm where the normal laws of physics held no power, where consciousness itself could reshape reality. The Iron Fist hung suspended in this strange space, its massive hull dwarfed by the cosmic forces that surrounded it. The ship's instruments showed readings that made no sense, and its crew stared through viewports at wonders and terrors that their minds could barely process on the bridge. Jiho sat in his command chair like a man waiting for execution. His hands gripped the armrests so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. Around him, his alien crew members whispered prayers to their various gods, knowing that they faced something beyond their understanding. The Eternal Threshold materialized. Directly in front of the Iron Fist, close enough that Jiho could see the patterns of light that flowed across its hull. The ship no longer looked like any technology he recognized. It seemed to be made of crystallized space itself, a vessel that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "End this charade," Jiho said, trying to keep his voice steady. "If you're going to kill me, just get it over with." Murray's laughter echoed through his mind, carrying harmonics that spoke of cosmic forces and infinite patience. "Death would be too simple for what you've done, too quick, too merciful." The space around the Iron Fist began to change. The pocket dimension reshaped itself, showing scenes from the attacks that Jiho had made possible. Holographic images filled the void, displaying the human colonies that had been destroyed using information he had provided. Jiho watched families running through burning streets as hegemony raiders hunted them down. He saw children torn from their parents' arms, loaded onto slave ships bound for alien markets. He witnessed the destruction of entire settlements, their populations scattered or killed because the raiders knew exactly where and when to strike. "This is what your betrayal accomplished?" Murray said, her voice carrying the weight of every life that had been lost. "Thousands of innocent people died because you sold them to their enemies. Entire communities were destroyed because you wanted money and power." "I didn't know it would be this bad," Jiho protested, his voice cracking. "They told me they just wanted trading information. They said they wouldn't hurt civilians." "They lied to you, just as you lied to everyone else," Murray replied. "But you knew what the hegemony was. You knew they were slavers and killers. You chose to believe their lies because it made your betrayal easier to accept." The holographic scenes changed, showing the faces of the people who had died. Men, women, and children who had trusted that their own kind would protect them. Families who had built new lives on distant worlds, only to have those lives destroyed by raiders who struck with perfect knowledge of their defenses. Jiho closed his eyes, trying to shut out the images, but they appeared directly in his mind. There was no escaping the evidence of what his actions had caused. "I can see into your thoughts," Murray continued. "I know you feel no real remorse for what you've done. You're only sorry that you were caught. Even now, you're trying to think of ways to bargain for your life, ways to convince me to let you live." She was right, and they both knew it. Jiho had spent his life looking out for himself, making whatever deals were necessary to advance his position. The suffering of others had never been his concern. "Your punishment must fit your crime," Murray announced. "You betrayed humanity by selling our people to aliens who see them as animals. You abandoned your own species for personal gain. Therefore you will be abandoned in return." The Iron Fist began to shudder as invisible forces took hold of it. The ship's hull started to dissolve, not into debris but into its component atoms. The process was slow and deliberate, giving Jiho time to understand what was happening. "You're going to kill my crew too?" he asked, watching as bridge officers panic as their ship came apart around them. "Your crew chose to serve the hegemony," Murray replied. "They participated in raids against human settlements. They helped plan the attack on Earth. They share responsibility for your crimes." But even as she spoke, Murray was carefully extracting the consciousness of each crew member. Their bodies dissolved along with the ship, but their minds were preserved in the quantum foam that filled the pocket dimension. They would exist as pure thought, aware but unable to act, for as long as the dimension itself survived. Jiho felt his own body beginning to change as the dissolution process reached the bridge. His skin became translucent, then transparent, then began to fade entirely. But his consciousness remained intact, held together by forces he could not comprehend. "This is your grave, Jiho," Murray told him as his physical form disappeared completely. "Not death, but something far worse. You will exist as pure consciousness, scattered across the dark energy that fills the spaces between stars. You will experience every moment of fear and pain that your victims felt, spread across eternity." The pocket dimension began to expand, growing larger and more complex. Jiho found his awareness stretching with it, his consciousness becoming part of the cosmic background itself. He could feel the thoughts and emotions of everyone who had died because of his betrayal. Their fear became his fear. Their pain became his pain, but unlike his victims, he would never find peace in death. He would exist forever in the darkness between worlds, a warning to anyone who might consider betraying their own kind. You wanted to abandon humanity for profit, Murray said, her voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Now humanity abandons you in return. Welcome to the void, Jiho. Welcome to your eternal home. The pocket dimension sealed itself, becoming a permanent part of the cosmic structure. From the outside, it appeared as nothing more than a small region of empty space. But within it, Jiho and his crew would experience an eternity of consequences for their betrayal of innocent lives. Murray emerged from the pocket dimension in the eternal threshold, returning to normal space near Earth, the planet hung before her like a blue jewel, safe now from the hegemony threat. News of the fleet's destruction was already spreading through human space. Carried by ships that had witnessed the impossible battle, she could have revealed herself to Earth's authorities, could have claimed credit for saving humanity from the alien invasion, but she had moved beyond the need for recognition or gratitude. Her transformation was complete, but it had cost her the ability to return to normal human society. Through her enhanced awareness, she could sense the reactions across human space. Fear and wonder mixed together as people tried to understand what had happened. Some called her a guardian angel sent to protect humanity. Others believed she was a new kind of weapon developed in secret, but a few, the wisest among them, understood the truth. Humanity had produced something unprecedented, a being who could stand against cosmic forces and emerge victorious. They realized that their species had potential beyond anything they had previously imagined. The eternal threshold began to fade from normal space, returning to the deep void where Murray had first discovered it. She had work to do in the darkness, between stars, watching for threats that normal humans could not perceive or fight. The galaxy had learned that there were consequences for those who preyed upon the innocent. The hegemony raids on human space stopped completely as word spread of their fleet's destruction. Other alien factions reconsidered their plans to exploit humanity's apparent weakness, but Murray's greatest victory was not the destruction of the invasion fleet. It was the demonstration that humans, when pushed beyond their limits, could transcend those limits entirely. She had shown the galaxy that humanity's potential was not bound by current understanding or technology. In the years that followed, human exploration and expansion accelerated dramatically. Other species began to treat humanity with new respect, recognizing that they faced a race capable of producing beings who could reshape reality itself. And in the darkness between stars, Murray watched and waited. She had become something more than human, but her purpose remained unchanged. She was humanity's guardian in the cosmic night, ensuring that no threat could catch her people unprepared again. The void that had once been her prison had become her domain. The darkness that was meant to be her grave had become her weapon. And somewhere in a pocket dimension sealed away from the rest of reality, a traitor experienced eternal consequences for his betrayal of innocence. Justice had been served, and the galaxy would remember the lesson for eons to come. Humanity was no longer prey. They had produced a predator of their own, one who hunted in dimensions that most beings could not even perceive. The story of the engineer who was abandoned in the void had become legend. But the reality was even more incredible than any story could capture. Murray had not just survived her ordeal. She had mastered it, transformed it, and used it to protect her people from threats they never even knew existed. In the end, betrayal had led not to destruction but to transcendence. And the void itself had become humanity's greatest defender.